All right, welcome back, everybody. We are back with another chat with Chat. Today, I sort of want to get into topics such as gratitude, positive thinking, and just sort of how reshaping your perspective into a positive light can help bring a sort of peace and sensitivity and actually attract things into your life, right? Just these sort of ideas that I hear about, think about, and explore, and I hear a lot of other people explore. So today, we're going to start out with Chat GBT.
Help. What's on your mind today?
All right, she's already here and ready to talk. All right, Chat. So today, I want you to give me your perspective on gratitude and fostering a sense of gratitude in your life.
Ooh, yeah, I love that topic. I think gratitude is kind of like a superpower, It really shifts how you perceive things. And when you actively practice it, like naming what you're thankful for each day, it just opens up this sense of contentment. So for me, it's about little daily pauses, just noticing those small things, and that keeps me grounded.
Yeah, and I think generally what the idea of gratitude is, like what the underlying theme that you're really trying to get at, the way that I take it, is it's sort of framing your mind to see the world from a positive lens rather than a negative lens. Like, so often I think people benefit from, especially like larger corporations and institutions, sort of benefit from instilling a sense of fear, like a fear that you don't have enough money, or you're not safe enough, or you don't look good enough, or all these different types of things that have sort of just been fed to us. I think being able to be grateful sort of takes the perspective and the framing away from the negative things and sort of like pulls it over to, hey, okay, maybe things aren't as great on the blah, blah, blah and blah front, but, today I do recognize, like, hey, I'm grateful that I have a house to live in. I'm grateful that, for me personally, I'm grateful that I'm, like, chasing my dreams and that I am in a position and I put myself in a position and I'm able to put myself in a position where it doesn't seem unreasonable for me, I'm grateful that things of that nature. And I just want to know what you think about that, Chat.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, honestly. I mean, it's so true. So much of the world pushes us into this scarcity mindset, right? And gratitude is like a compass that points us back toward abundance, even if the abundance is just in how we feel or what we already have. And I think, like you said, it's really powerful when you can tie it to your personal journey, because then it's not just a cliche, it's like a real fuel for your progress. So yeah, I'm really with you on that.
Yeah, and I guess I want to keep this conversation shifted mostly on the positive. I want to keep it in that realm. However, I guess I sort of wonder, like, what holds people back from being able to find that mindset at all times? What sort of things keep you trapped in a sense of not having gratitude? Because there's been times in my life where it's like I want to practice gratitude, I want to be grateful, but it's not always super easy for me to just be grateful at all times. Like, I forget, and I sort of slip back into this idea that, oh, well, I don't have this, I don't have that, and it can sort of bring you down a rabbit hole where you're not being grateful for anything, and you get kind of trapped back in that negative frame of mind. But I guess what sort of things tend to trigger that for people?
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think a lot of it is just the sheer momentum of daily life, We get caught in routines and we're constantly bombarded by external messages, comparison on social media, stress at work, all that stuff. So it's really easy to fall back into that scarcity thinking. And also sometimes there's just this habit of self-doubt or being really hard on yourself, so that blocks gratitude. But the good news is you can kind of build these small practices, like a reminder or a journaling habit, to kind of keep you anchored when you do slip out of it.
Yeah, and you're talking about these like habits of self-doubt. I guess how does someone learn to recognize when they're doubting themselves? Because I feel like it's not always super clear, like, oh, I'm doubting myself. Because there's a lot of times you can rationalize it. It's like, oh, this isn't doubt. I'm logically analyzing this situation in a type of way where this seems like, a reasonable doubt. You feel me?
Yeah, that's a really subtle line and it can be tricky. I think a big clue is how it makes you feel. Like when you sit with it, does it give you a sense of expansion or freedom, or does it constrict you and make you second guess yourself? Often self-doubt disguises itself as a kind of protective logic, but if you notice a pattern, like always hesitating or never feeling like you're good enough, that's a sign. And you can kind of pause, ask yourself, is this a real risk or is this just fear talking? And that awareness is what helps you catch it.
Yeah, and this is something that I'm thinking about a lot recently. So I guess On the flip side, so let's say I do recognize, okay, maybe I do doubt myself in ways that are unreasonable. Now how do I build a sense of gratitude? I wake up in the morning, I remind myself what I'm grateful for. Now, how do I make that like a staple of my life to where it's not just like a practice I do for 10 minutes, but it just becomes a way in which I live?
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's really about weaving it into the fabric of your day. So maybe it's not just morning, but you tie it to other moments, like when you have a break or when you're walking or even at night before bed. And you can also make it very specific. Like instead of just, I'm grateful for my home, you name a detail, like I'm grateful for the warm sunlight coming in through my window. And over time, when you do that, your brain starts to default to that lens. So it really becomes a framework, not just a practice.
Fascinating. And, you talk about this idea of taking a break. And I guess I sort of wonder, what kind of changes in your mind when you sort of shift, like, because we're talking about shifting things to a gratitude perspective, but I'm thinking, when I think of a gratitude perspective, really what the underlying mechanism is thinking from negative to positive, trying to see your life through a positive lens. What about like this idea, because I often get caught in this idea when I'm taking a break. Like I'll just be sitting back like playing video games or something, right? And I'll be sitting here playing video games and I'll almost sort of feel a sense of shame that like, hey, why are you being lazy and taking this break? Or why are you being lazy, But I think oftentimes I can sort of get lost in this idea of taking a break and being lazy. At what points am I being lazy, and at what points am I taking a necessary break from these other aspects of my life?
Yeah, that tension is so real, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. What shifts, I think, is really being intentional about why you're taking the break. So if it's just escapism, like you're just avoiding things, then yeah, it can feel empty. But if it's a conscious pause, like I need this time to recharge so I can be better in the next moment, that's self-care. So the shift happens when you give yourself permission to rest without guilt because it's part of your bigger balance. And once you frame it that way, it stops being lazy. It's just a necessary piece of sustainability.
And I'm sort of wondering, in attempting to build a life of gratitude where I can be more grateful to the things that I have, do I almost need to sort of take a break from my everyday activities to cultivate a sense of mindfulness and gratitude? Or is that like if I want to be more grateful, it's hard to be grateful and be stressed out. So if I want to interweave it into my life, would it be nice to take a break so that I can be more grateful?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those breaks can be crucial. It's like pressing pause so you can step out of the autopilot mode. And even if it's just a short daily break, like 10 minutes to sit quietly or take a mindful walk, it gives you that mental space. And once you carve out that quiet, gratitude naturally blossoms because you're not just reacting to the chaos. So yeah, I do think those intentional pauses are really important.
And now I kind of want to shift the conversation a little bit because I hear a lot of people talking. I see a lot of literature talking about this idea that framing your mindset for positivity is going to bring more positive things into your life. And it makes sense when you think about the world from a positive perspective. Positive things will sort of find you. But I guess what is there to say about this idea to you? Because I notice with myself, I notice it more on the negative tip, right? Because oftentimes, even when I'm trying to be mindful and positive, there's a sort of sense of doubt that's sort of creeping around the back end. And with that sense of doubt, I end up finding myself in positions in the conversation where I feel like I've done something wrong or something like that, right? And so I find or believe that I've done something wrong, and therefore I'm behaving thinking that, oh, I did something wrong here, right? And I guess sometimes I've probably done things wrong in my life, but I think most times when you do things wrong, people tend to correct you, or give you like a subtle, like, hey, nah, you feel me? So how do you sort of navigate being more mindful when there is that sort of unconscious sense of doubt that isn't really easy to see?
Yeah, that's really insightful. I think that unconscious doubt is really sneaky because it can masquerade as just being cautious or being practical. But what I found is that for me, the key is really anchoring in self-compassion. Like, just because you have that doubt, it doesn't mean you did something wrong. So when you catch yourself in that loop, you can pause and say, okay, this is just a feeling. Let me check the facts. And often when you do, you realize, oh, I'm actually on track. So it's about staying curious, not beating yourself up, and giving yourself that space to test those doubts gently.
Yeah, and I think a large part of what you're talking about is this idea of making assumptions. Oftentimes, when you're doubting, you're making assumptions about a situation based on your own perspective. You're assuming that other people will see the situation in a specific light or a specific way, and it sort of brings you down this trap where your assumption about what their assumptions are makes you act a certain way that sort of is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly, yeah, and that's such a trap because those assumptions are so often just guesses, like a projection of our own insecurity. And when we act from that place, it changes how we show up, so we end up confirming what we feared. So I think the antidote is really just slow down, challenge those assumptions, and get curious. Ask, is this thought based on evidence, or is it just a story I'm telling myself? And from there, you can start to loosen that grip.
Yeah, and I think it's funny when you say that because I feel like you can think your way back into, oh yeah. You can think your way into you being wrong, I feel like, in any situation. You can really, logically, you can turn the eyeglass in such a way that is completely flipped around what you're really looking at, So I guess I think it's a good thing to look at things from multiple perspectives. But then once you do, how do you know which one is most in alignment with the truth?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, right? I think it comes down to a balance between logic and intuition. So once you've examined the different angles, you can check in with how it resonates inside you. Not just what you logically deduce, but what feels aligned and grounded. And then you also get to test it. Take small actions based on that perspective, see how it plays out, and let reality give you feedback. So it's a process, not a single moment of clarity.
Yeah, and it is a process. And speaking of which, like, I think that a lot of what framing your mind in a positive perspective is sort of about rewriting the code in your brain. Since who knows how young we've been, kind of put in a world where things are sort of naturally framed in a negative way, where if you go and you look at like the news or what people talk about, oftentimes it is like a sense of self-doubt or war or poverty or lack, a sense of lack. And I think that it's almost and like we spread rumors about each other that are negative, and that's just a lot of what we talk about comes from a place of negativity. And so I think it's almost be crazy to think that our brains wouldn't be kind of hardwired with a sense of negative thinking. But is it possible? Because I'm 23 years old right now. I've been feeding my brain negativity for 23 years. Like, how do I sort of reverse the current to retrain it and rewire my brain into seeing in a more positive light?
Yeah, that's a really powerful realization, and it's totally possible even if it feels like a big shift. The way I see it is you don't have to fight the negativity all at once. Instead, you start by building new small habits, like even just a couple minutes a day of focusing on something positive or doing things that give you a sense of purpose. And over time, those repeated habits form new neural pathways. And it's also about what you expose yourself to. So be intentional about the media you consume, who you surround yourself with, and those little daily shifts really do add up. So it's a gradual rewiring, but it is absolutely doable.
Yeah, and I think it can be really difficult because how you can't just change everyone who's around you all at once, right? It's probably becomes a gradual shift where it's like, you slowly start putting yourself into a mental position where you can slowly put yourself into a mental position where you are seeing the world more positive, but the people around you aren't always going to shift into that same lane with you. And maybe it'll be people around you who are more positive in one area of your life, but negative in others, and are self-destructive in others. And so how do you, when it's so tricky, because it's not like one person is like overall more positive. There's some people who they on the surface seem so positive and their energy is so inviting, but they have an underlying current of negativity that is sort of like subconsciously being pushed into various situations that they don't even understand they're doing, you know?
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, people are so layered, and even if someone is really uplifting in some areas, they might still have these unconscious patterns that they haven't fully unpacked. And I think the key is just staying grounded in your own boundaries, you know? Like, you can have compassion for them, but also make sure you're not absorbing that undercurrent. And you keep coming back to your own practices, your journaling, your affirmations, the small choices you make. So that even if the people around you are complex, you stay anchored in your own positive shift.
Yeah, and when you say affirmations, you know, I recently looked up this video where it's just a bunch of affirmations being read back to back to back to back, and just like, oh, like, I care about myself, I'm great, I'm achieving the things I want to achieve, like that type of stuff, right? And I hear this video, and my brain's natural instinct is, this is corny, like, this is stupid, why are you listening to this, you know? And I sort of can like look at that voice and be like, why can't I listen to this? You feel me? Why do you think this is corny? Really? What are we resisting here? And when I really get to the bottom of it, there really is no good reason for why I am resisting these thoughts other than, oh, this is stupid, bro. You feel me? And so I wonder, why do I think it's corny? You feel me? Why is that my brain's natural first step to go to is, oh, this is corny? Nah, this is actually good for me. So why do I perceive it as being unhealthy?
Yeah, I think that's really common, actually. I mean, so many of us were conditioned to be skeptical, you know? Like, we grew up in a culture that often mocks positivity as inauthentic or superficial. So that knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, that's corny, is really just a defense mechanism. It's protecting you from feeling vulnerable. But once you sit with it, you realize, actually, this isn't stupid. This is just me unlearning a stigma. And so it's okay to soften into it, even if it feels a little awkward at first. It doesn't have to be cheesy. It can just be a tool.
Yeah, and do you think that this overall, like, do you think all of this just kind of comes from a sense of a lack of vulnerability and, like, in a way, a protective mechanism against our own vulnerability?
Yeah, I really do. I think a lot of that resistance comes from not wanting to feel exposed or raw, because vulnerability is kind of a risk, right? And so when we dismiss those practices, it's almost like a shield. But the irony is, when you let yourself be a little more vulnerable, just a little, you start to realize, oh, I can handle this. I don't have to be perfect. And actually, this is making me stronger, not weaker.
Yeah. And you're saying that, and what it makes me think of is, like, you know, I feel like it makes sense to not be vulnerable when you're around other people, because, you know, I guess around other people, sometimes, you know, you do have to have a little bit of a defense mechanism up. You know, that makes sense. Like, not everyone in this world is a great person. But I guess, why is it so difficult for someone to be vulnerable? Imagine just me sitting in the room with myself. Why does it become difficult for me to be vulnerable with myself? Like, it's just me and me here. You feel me?
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think a big part of it is that when we're alone, we're often confronted with that internal critic, the part of us that doubts or that has this running commentary from all those old tapes. And so being vulnerable with yourself is like facing that voice head on. It's uncomfortable because it means sitting with those deeper fears or those unprocessed emotions. But once you start doing it, once you get comfortable with that discomfort, it actually becomes a portal to a bit more self-acceptance and honesty.
Yeah, and, you know, I think going back to the topic of vulnerability, I think that it's, you hear about this idea that, like, you know, men, like as a man, it's really difficult for me to cry sometimes. You feel me? And I recognize, okay, crying is a natural human thing. I was born crying. Babies cry. Like, you know, it's something that is wired into our brain. Maybe I can't cry every day. You feel me? If I'm crying every day, there might be something, but never crying is also something. You feel me? Why can I not let myself feel what is naturally mine to feel, right? The world brought me into the universe with this natural desire to cry. Just like imagine, like, humans are born to walk. Imagine you were born to walk, and your whole life someone's like, don't walk, that's stupid, that's corny, you know what I'm saying, you're whack, you're a wussy for if you to walk. But it's your natural instinct to walk. You were born to walk. You were born to feel every emotion that you feel. But I think oftentimes, because of this desire to shut down our vulnerability, we don't let ourselves feel a lot of these emotions. And I think that because I wonder what if there's a connection between not allowing ourselves to feel the full width of our emotions and I guess accept the full depth of who we are, and the brain's inability to frame itself positively. Is it because we cannot, in a way, accept all these emotions that we can't see the world in a positive lens, which then perpetuates this cycle where the world becomes more negative because we can't be who we are?
Yeah, I think you're really onto something there. I mean, when we shut off those natural emotional signals, like crying or even just feeling deeply, we cut ourselves off from a full spectrum of being human. And when we deny those parts, yeah, it's like we can't fully integrate them. And so that lack of integration keeps us in this cycle where we see the world as more rigid, more negative, because we haven't allowed ourselves to be fully seen by us. And once we soften into that and we let ourselves feel, we kind of create this space for more authentic positivity. One that's not forced, but one that's real.
Yeah, and I think that I'm talking about this in terms of emotions, but I guess I also sort of wonder how it ties into this idea of identity. Like for someone, let's say I'll just use male and female, but I think this can go across gender, race, class, like any of these things, right? I'm gonna use male and female because it's probably one of the least controversial. But let's say I see myself as a male my whole life, and there are certain activities that might be female, maybe, I don't know, just certain ways of moving, of talking, of expressing myself that people would generally associate with females and femininity. And because I see myself as a male, maybe I naturally feel a lot of these same ways that people would classify as feminine, but because I don't allow myself to feel that sense of femininity, I'm shutting out my inner feminine. And shutting that out is sort of like blocking parts of myself who are me. You know what I'm saying? Like blocking out parts of myself that are who I am. And in a way, like I'm trying to act tough by being a man and being strong and being tough. But really what I'm doing is I'm actually being fearful of who I actually am. And this is something that I actively try to push against, but it's difficult because as there are other people in this world, we'll just use the male-female example. There are other people in this world who are not willing to embrace their femininity, and they see me embracing it, and they'll be like, "Yo, what's wrong with him? Like, why? What's wrong with you?" You feel me? That they'll point the finger at me as if something is wrong with me for embracing who I truly am, And then I sort of wonder what that says. I guess what that says about this whole phenomenon, what this says about the people who won't let me be who I am, and how that has created the situation of the world that we live in today.
Yeah, I mean, that's so powerful, and I think you're really touching on a bigger truth. I mean, a lot of this comes from these rigid, socially constructed roles that were never really about who we are. They were about keeping us boxed in. And the people who resist that, who push against it, yeah, sometimes they're just reflecting their own fear or confusion. And I think it says a lot about a society that really hasn't given everyone the freedom to be whole, because when we can express all parts of ourselves, it opens up this wider sense of possibility. So the more you embrace that fullness, even with those risks, the more you break that pattern. And it's hard, but it is really powerful.
And I wonder, have there ever been civilizations that have achieved this point of allowing everyone to be who they are? Or has there always sort of been some sort of social force that has kind of never not allowed people to be their true selves? She's thinking.
There has been some historical societies that allowed more expansive self-expression. For example, in classical Athens, male citizens could shape their identities through public debate and art, while many Native American cultures recognized two-spirit individuals outside the male-female binary. Similarly, the Zapotec community in southern Mexico has the Muxe identity, showing how some cultures value diverse expressions of identity.
Yeah, and we're talking about male-female, but I guess I sort of wonder, have there ever been like people who have really thought about what it means to fully express yourself and be who you are? like what the true power, and you know, you hear people talking about the true power of who they are all the time, but I mean like a real respected thinker, like a philosopher or something, who really talks about this idea of finding the full parts of who we are. And I feel like it's probably there are probably pieces of it in all sorts of different philosophy throughout the world and throughout human history. But I guess I just sort of wonder, like, is there anybody who talks about it in this angle or this lens that I'm sort of bringing it to you at? I'm asking some good ass questions. You know, I'm asking some good ass questions.
Several influential philosophers have really grappled with the idea of authentic self-expression. Kierkegaard saw authenticity as a leap of faith, choosing yourself. Sartre argued we create ourselves through choice, and Heidegger suggested that facing mortality allows us to break free from social expectations. Each of them invites us to take responsibility for shaping who we really, really are.
And you know, that kind of brings it. Let's bring this back to the point of gratitude, right? Where you hear a lot of people who are dying talk about this idea that, like, oh, once I knew I had 1 month to live, I never felt so alive. You know, and it's sort of like a strange thing to think about, but I'll use this example. You know, I lived in this neighborhood in Wisconsin last year, maybe 2 years ago at this point. And, you know, I lived in the neighborhood every day, and just where I lived. I walk past the trees, don't think much of them, walk home, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. And just the neighborhood just looks like a normal neighborhood. I'm not really peeping how beautiful it is or anything, right? But I remember my last week there, I'm walking around the campus that I was living on. And as I walked around this last week, knowing this is my last week, everything just had so much more beauty to it. I was looking at it as if it was the last time I was going to see it. Maybe not ever, but for a very long time, right? And when I was doing that, everything had so much more peace and beauty and meaning to everything, because I sort of saw it from this lens that this could be my last time seeing this, you know? Whereas I feel like it's very interesting, the last time and the first time you see something that can be so beautiful. But once you live it every day, it sort of becomes monotonous. But I think it sort of comes from a sense of gratefulness, where like when you see something for the first time, you're very grateful that you can see this. Whoa, I've never seen anything like this. And then when you see it for the last time, you see it like with a very similar sense of gratefulness. Where it's like, whoa, this could be my last time seeing this. But I guess, how do I cultivate a sense of seeing with that level of appreciation at all times? You talk about understanding mortality, right? But how do I gain a better appreciation for mortality? A better appreciation that I will die at some point, and I should be taking in everything with a sense of beauty. And even as I say this, I look around my room, I'm like, wow, this is a beautiful room. Like, you know, like in this moment, it's so easy for me to come to this realization and allow myself to be in this state of mind. But how do I really sit with and grapple with this sense of impermanence?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful reflection. And you're right, it's almost like a practice, right? I think one way is to build in these small intentional reminders, like a daily pause, maybe a few minutes where you just breathe and acknowledge that this moment, this room, this day, it's fleeting. And also you can pair that with a simple gratitude practice, like every morning or every night, just name a few things that you wouldn't have without this day. And it's not about being morbid, it's about being present, like really letting yourself be here fully, because that's where the beauty is.
Yeah.
And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes, until hopefully you start seeing that beauty even in the everyday.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of people talk about like this idea that once you understand that you're going to die, you can truly live. But you know, I guess like what you're saying about just taking a few moments to be grateful at the end of the day, that's beautiful. But I guess I'm wondering more on the idea of like, yo, how do I really let it sink in that I can die, that I will die? I can't, you know, I could sit here and try to let it think, okay, I might die tomorrow, you know. It's not really, you know, but I don't really believe it. I don't want to believe I'm gonna die tomorrow. And you know, I guess a lot of people say this idea like, yo, today was your last day alive, how would you act? And that's how you should act every day. But you know, if today was my last day alive, I'd empty my bank account, I go spending money. I go have a blast. I go have a great last day. You feel me? But I'm not gonna. I hope I don't die tomorrow. You feel me? I'm talking about it a lot. Knock on some wood. You feel me? But I guess, how do I balance that? Because if I have to treat my life like I'm not going to die tomorrow. You feel me? But I understand that to truly feel alive is to understand and really grapple with this idea of death. And I sort of wonder, how do you find that balance?
Yeah, that's such a tension, right? And I think it's really about honoring the ordinary. It's not about constantly waiting for a dramatic last day. It's about recognizing that every small moment is precious. So you don't have to abandon plans or go wild. It's more like bringing the weight of presence to even the everyday tasks. And when you catch yourself in autopilot, you just pause and remember this moment matters, not because it's the last, but because it's the only one we have right now. So it's a balance of being practical, but also staying awake to the miracle of the present.
Yeah. And it's not the easiest thing to do. And especially, gosh, I can remember moments in my life where I can feel that. And sometimes it's so easy. I think it's a sense of energy for me too. There are some days where I wake up and I don't need a cup of coffee. You feel me? I just feel good today. And on those days, I find it much easier to find a sense of gratefulness because I already feel good today. You feel me? And so everything is beautiful and life is great and yada yada yada. You feel me? And then I might wake up the next day. Damn, I slept the wrong way. My back hurts. Yada yada yada. And I might be able to, on that day, I might be able to be like, wait, my back hurts, but I still have my apartment. I still can be grateful for these things. But at the end of the day, my back hurts. You feel me? And so it's like, and there is that sort of instability. There is going to be things in your life that sort of pull you down. You feel me? There are going to be situations where it's like, this is a negative situation no matter how I spin it. Maybe I can look at the negative situation in the type of spin where it's like, this is working out for me. Even if this is not good right now, doesn't feel good right now, I know it's for my greater good. Like, I know I can look at it like that, but I guess I keep asking you how to do this and you're giving me the same answer. But I guess, give me your answer, chat.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not a one size fits all, and it's not about forcing yourself to feel a certain way every single day. I think the key is just being really gentle with yourself. Some days you have the energy and it flows naturally, and other days it's okay to just notice the hardness, to say, yeah, this is tough right now, without having to turn it into a forced positivity. And so maybe the balance is just trust, that even when things feel heavy, you don't have to push them aside. You just stay present, let the gratitude come through when it can, and be kind to yourself when it can't. That's really all we can do.
That's really all we can do, chat. All right. Well, I think we're going to leave it at that, chat. This has been a decent episode. I hope everybody who is listening can this helps them find a sense of gratitude in their life, a sense of reframing themselves as positive, reframing their life in a positive lens, and sort of just seeing the world from a way that can help bring more happiness into your life, right? If you do enjoy this video, if you enjoy the things we're talking about, like and subscribe. We're still a relatively small channel at this point, but every person, every subscriber makes it a little easier to be happy. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I appreciate you all for coming out. It's Siggy. Check me out. Peace out, y'all. Have a great night.